Ernesto Mercado has made it clear he's not impressed with IBF light welterweight champion Hitchins, and he isn't shy about saying it. The 23-year-old knockout artist, undefeated in 17 fights with 16 wins coming by stoppage, has been stirring things up by calling Hitchins a fake champion. For Mercado, this isn't just trash talk. It's frustration built on the belief that Hitchins is deliberately avoiding serious threats in the division. Mercado believes he's one of those threats, someone Hitchins wants no part of, and he's fed up with what he sees as calculated matchmaking that keeps Hitchins protected rather than tested. What really rubs Mercado the wrong way is Hitchins' recent track record of picking opponents. After snatching the IBF title from Australia's Liam Paro last December, Hitchins is now set to defend his belt against another Aussie, George Kambosos Jr., on June 14th at Madison Square Garden's Theater in New York. Meanwhile, Mercado will be on the same card, fighting Jonathan Montrell in a 10-rounder on the undercard. Mercado sees himself as the real attraction on that card, young, explosive, and hungry. But despite his rising status, he feels like Hitchins and his team are making sure to steer clear of anyone that poses a real threat to that shiny new belt. It's not just Hitchins' choice of opponents that bothers Mercado. He has major issues with the way Hitchins carries himself. In interviews, Hitchins often talks like he's the next big thing in boxing, someone who calls the shots and controls the tempo of the division. But Mercado isn't buying it. In fact, he outright accuses Hitchins of being a fraud. He references a missed opportunity to fight Subriel Matias, a tough and dangerous opponent. According to Mercado, Hitchins backed out of that fight and let Liam Paro step in and take the risk instead. To him, that was a clear sign that Hitchins didn't want smoke with a true pressure fighter like Matias. In Mercado's eyes, a real champion doesn't duck that kind of challenge. Now, with the Kambosos fight officially set, Mercado's frustration has reached a new level. He doesn't understand why Hitchins keeps going after Australian fighters while avoiding American contenders like himself and others in the division. He sees this as a deliberate move to stay in a comfort zone. Mercado questions the logic. Why? Would a newly crowned champion fight back-to-back Australians when there's so much homegrown talent waiting for a shot? And when it comes to Kambosos specifically, Mercado doesn't mince words. He's outright baffled by the decision to give Kambosos a title opportunity. With a recent record of 2 wins and 3 losses in his last 5 outings, Kambosos hardly screams title challenger. Mercado sees this as a reward for mediocrity. The politics of boxing are never far from the conversation, and Mercado isn't ignoring that angle either. Promoter Eddie Hearn, who represents both Hitchins and Kambosos, has been accused of pulling the strings behind the scenes. Mercado speculates that this is less about putting together the best possible fights and more about keeping both of Hearn's fighters happy. Giving Kambosos a shot may keep him relevant, while also giving Hitchins a winnable defense. Mercado knows that if Hitchins had been matched against someone like himself or another high-risk American contender, the story would look very different. But that's not the route they chose, and that's what makes this all feel like a setup in Mercado's eyes. Mercado also takes personal aim at Hitchins' image. While Hitchins has made claims about being from the trenches and representing the gritty underdog story, Mercado calls that bluff. He's not convinced that Hitchins has walked the hard road he tries to portray. In fact, he says Hitchins is just musty, implying that the champion's act is more for show than grounded in reality. It's not just about resume or boxing style anymore. This is about identity. Mercado doesn't believe Hitchins has earned the right to talk like he's the face of New York boxing. In Mercado's view, the fans don't even recognize Hitchins as a hometown hero. And that disconnect only adds to the narrative that Hitchins is more illusion than substance. Even the way Hitchins fights has been part of the criticism. His style leans heavily on defense, footwork, and distance control, similar to the slick, elusive approach used by Shakur Stevenson. That kind of technical finesse has its fans, but it's also drawn a fair share of boos during fights, especially when the action slows down. Hitchins heard it loud and clear during his bouts with Jose Zepeda and John Bauza, where fans voiced their frustration over the lack of excitement. Mercado doesn't think Hitchins' methodical approach will ever win over the broader fan base. For him, boxing is about more than just winning. It's about proving something. entertaining the crowd and taking risks in the ring. Hitchins, on the other hand, seems to believe that a win over Kambosos will catapult him into the spotlight. He's spoken confidently about this being a stepping stone toward bigger fights and more recognition. But Mercado just laughs at that idea. He doesn't believe beating Kambosos, a fighter who hasn't done much since his shocking win over Teofimo Lopez, will move the needle for Hitchins. In fact, Mercado argues that Kambosos is exactly the type of guy you fight on the way to a title, not once you already have one. Choosing Kambosos for a voluntary defense, especially when he's just moved up to 140 and hasn't proven himself in the weight class, sends a message that Hitchins isn't looking to challenge himself. The real question looming in all this is whether Hitchins is avoiding Mercado because he sees the danger. Mercado brings firepower, aggression, and the kind of hunger that can break a complacent champion. It's easy to keep that 0 in your record when you're not putting it on the line against the division's most dangerous punchers. And right now, Mercado believes Hitchins is taking the safe route, surrounding himself with a bubble of protection through matchmaking and promotion. But that only works for so long. Sooner or later, if Hitchins wants to be taken seriously as the man at 140, he's going to have to step into the fire. And when that moment comes, Mercado is going to be waiting. For now, all Ernesto can do is keep stacking wins, making statements, and forcing the conversation. His upcoming fight against Jonathan Montrell is another opportunity to showcase why he deserves a shot at the top. He knows the politics of boxing won't always play fair, and the best fighters don't always get the fastest path. But he's determined to break through that ceiling, even if he has to crash through it. Mercado's message to Hitchins is crystal clear. The fans know what's going on, the other contenders see the avoidance, and it's only a matter of time before the smoke clears and Hitchins has to answer for the way he's been navigating his reign. And when that time comes, Mercado isn't just going to show up, he's going to come for everything. The title, the recognition, the legitimacy. He wants to prove that he's not just another loud prospect with power. He wants to be the one who strips the gloss off of Richardson Hitchins' image and shows the boxing world what a real champion looks like. In the meantime, fans will watch closely as this rivalry brews, waiting to see if Hitchins will finally respond to the pressure or keep moving around it. But if the heat keeps rising, even Hitchins won't be able to dodge it forever.